Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you can beat any of these puzzles, you are definitely over a 1000 rated player, which puts you above 50% of the chess players in terms of ranking. So what we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be taking a look at checkmating puzzles. Now these are not your normal chess.com puzzles where you just make a couple of moves and easily checkmate your opponent. These are going to be puzzles that are going to make you think. A lot of these puzzles are going to be puzzles that deal with taking away and removing squares for the king, removing escape squares, and positioning your pieces for the final blow. These are not going to be obvious. I'm going to go here, 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 and that's going to be checkmate. Really got to put your thinking cap on here. I'll start off with a couple of relatively easier checkmating puzzles. So in this puzzle, this is a checkmate in 2. Now you have to understand about puzzles in general. If you are trying to solve a puzzle, every single one is going to either end up in a checkmate, winning material, or trying to draw if you're losing. It is white to play here, so obviously we are trying to checkmate here. And we have to do this in 2 moves. And in these puzzles and in the game of chess in general, you have to train yourself to think of every single move, every single capture, every single check, no matter how silly, crazy, or inadequate it seems. So the first thing that we need to do when we look at these puzzles is, first of all, count how many total checks do we have in this position. First thing I'm going to look at is, how do we check a king? Well, I have 1, I have 2, I have 3. Do I have any other checking moves in this position? Don't see any, so we have 3 checks here. Well, let's take a look at each one. If we play check here, king takes, that's immediate draw. If we play the check here, king takes, that's immediate draw. If we play check here on d6, the king will likely go up to a4, and do we have a checkmate? And the answer is no, because with a king and a queen, our king has to be at least 1 square away from the king. Our king would need to be here, here, somewhere 1 square away from the king. So that means we're going to need to get our king a little bit closer. So this check does nothing. We have no checkmate there. So that tells me, okay, we're going to have to move our king somewhere. Well, if we move our king to the left at c3 and the black king goes up, we can give a check here on f4. The king goes up, and then once again, we are way too far away with our own king. So that's not going to work. Okay, let's get the king this way. We go here, king goes up. Again, my king is already way too far away. Any kind of check that we give, the king is escaping. Okay, so that leaves us with one other option. What if we play king here? King to c4. Well, the queen has all of these squares cut off. The king will have these 2 squares and this square cut off. So that leaves the black king with only 1 move to a4. So if we go here, the black king must move up to a4. Do have a checkmate in this position, and we have the classic checkmate here, boxing in the king. The white king has these squares covered, and the queen sneaks in a2 for the final blow, and that is checkmate. All right, let's take a look at the next one. It is white to play here. Now, anytime you have a couple of other pieces besides a queen, you're trying to checkmate, you always want to be careful about checking to make sure that there's not going to be any kind of stalemate. So again, we want to look for checking moves. Pause the video here. Heard you guys to pause the video throughout the different puzzles and see if you can figure this out on your own. First of all, let's count how many total checks does white have in this position. Well, we can't check the king on a dark square if we have the light square bishop. You can never check the king with your king. That means it has to be with a rook. How many different checks do we have? 1, 2. That's it, okay? So if we give a check here, then black will take, and that will result in a draw. If we check the king on c3, the king cannot go here because the bishop will have b1 covered. If we give a check on c3, king slides over to d1. This is another checkmate in 2. 1, we got a checkmate on the next move, and that simply is not going to happen. This is not mate. The king could either go to d2 or to e1. Okay, so once we rule out all of our checking moves, in order to checkmate in 2 moves, that means we're going to have to play a non-checking move. Well, we got to be careful about making sure there is no stalemate. Well, if we move the rook somewhere, not to d2 or to d1, if we just simply move the rook backwards, where can the black king go? Can't go here because of the bishop. Can't go here or here because of the king. It won't be able to go anywhere on the d file because of the rook. So if the rook stays on the d file, then that is going to be a stalemate. So that tells me, maybe we need to move the light squared bishop somewhere. Well, where can we move the bishop to? If we move it here, that does allow black a move. So if we move the bishop away, then black can move their pawn. That won't be stalemate. So if we move the bishop away here, the black pawn moves. Do I have a mate? No, I don't see a mate. So that kind of leads me to think think that maybe this is going to be one of those classic rook mates with the bishop and the rook, all right? So what if we move our bishop here to g4? Well, then we're actually are going to be threatening checkmate on d1. Is that a stalemate? And the answer is no, because black does have a move. They will be able to move their pawn. So the correct answer is bishop to g4. Black has to move their pawn, and we come down with the rook on d1, protected by the bishop, and that is game over. Let's continue. Let's move along. This is another checkmate in 2 moves. This is not quite so easy. Pause the video and see if you can figure this one out. So once again, we need to count the total number of checks. So how many total checks does white have in this position? You remember, you got to consider every single check, even though on the surface it may look like an absurd move. How many total checks do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we have any others? Don't think so. So these are our 4 checking squares. Now this might not be a checkmating puzzle where we actually do give a check. This is not going to work because obviously the king takes. That's not going to work. So we can maybe narrow it down to these 3 squares. Let's take a look at queen to b4 check. Rook blocks, and I don't see any kind of checkmate there. We can give another check here, but then again, the rook can block or the king can move. We give a check here, rook blocks. If we go back, the rook will just block. Okay, so we can rule out this check. We can rule out that check. What if we go to e4? Check. Once again, we have rook blocks. Can't take that, obviously. Check. Rook blocks. Again, if we go back, the rook can just block again. Check. Rook blocks. Queen down to e1 check, but then the king can just back up to g5. There is no mate in 2. Okay, so we've kind of exhausted. A lot of these puzzles is just process of elimination and just going through every single combination until you find the right one. Okay, so let's try this. This might not work. If we play queen to e1, where will the king go? Okay, so here, now we've been talking about the rook blocking. Well, now if the rook blocks, now because the king is on h2, okay, check, rook here, we can take that, and that will actually be checkmate. Okay, so again, you have to resist the urge to say, oh, well, that must be it. Let's just play queen e1, and they're going to go here, and that's mate. Is there another option for black? What if we play queen to e1, but the king moves? What if the king goes to g4? Now this is not mate anymore. King has a way to escape. I have to think about that. Queen e1 check, king to g4. Now, and you have to visualize this, and I'm encourage you guys to draw lots and lots of arrows. I draw arrows when I'm actually playing in a real game. Even by myself, I will draw arrows. It will help you to visualize these things. Check, king here. All right, so the king is on g4. Highlight squares, guys. Queen is on e1. In this position, how many total checks do we have? Count all of them. Pause the video, see if you can count the checks, visualizing this in your mind. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have a ton of checks in this position. So we have to go through each one. Check, king here. We said this is no. King can just take us there. Check. King here. There, check. King just escapes. No big deal. Check. King here. Check back to e6. Well, the king just goes back. Check. King here. Queen back to e4 check. Where does the king go? King's here. Queen is on e4. No, 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 no. Bingo! Yes, sir. That is the answer. So queen e1 check. King has to go to g4. And whoops. That's mate. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now we're moving on to some checkmates in 3. Start to increase the difficulty here just a little bit. So it's white to move. Again, pause the video and see if you can solve this on your own. Okay, what's the first thing that we look for here, guys? First thing, always count the number of checks. King's on a light square. Have the dark squared bishop. No bueno. Can't check with the rook. Can we check with the light squared bishop? No, no. Okay, so no, no, no. No way to check with that rook. He's on a different planet. What about the queen? How many checks do we have with the queen? See, 1. Doesn't look too good, does it? You might say, well, I can't take that. The king will just take. Yeah. But, however, comma, asterisk, you cannot stop there, guys. In puzzles, you cannot stop there in the game of chess. You cannot write this off and say, oh, it must not be that because they can just take. Yeah, but what is the follow-up? Queen takes, king takes. So now the king is on f7. So visualize this in your mind. How many total checks do we have in that position? Now it's a little different. We can check with the rook on e7. We can check with the rook on f5. We can check with the bishop on c4. We have any other checks? Takes, takes, Still can't check here. Still on the light square. Still can't check with that bishop. So we only have 3 checks in that position. 1, 2. Actually, we do have a 4th check. Takes, takes. We can check twice with the rook, and we can actually sacrifice. That is a check, and we can play bishop to c4. So let's take a look at the 2 rook checks. Takes, takes, check. Rook or queen takes. Say the rook takes, check, king escapes. Okay, so that's not a mate in 3. Check, takes, check with the bishop. Where would the king go? No, 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 no. Bishop has the dark squares cut off. Light square bishop has the light squares cut off. Pawn has f6 cut off. Okay, that looks promising. Check, king here, check. That's the second move. The only move they have is to block with the queen. Bishop takes d5, and that will be checkmate. Puzzle solved. 1, 2, 3. Bam. Beautiful queen sacrifice on f7 for the 3-move checkmate. Okay, not bad. Let's keep going. All right, next position, we are white to play. Very complicated position here. King's kind of in the center. Lots of different options here. So you're gonna have to put on your thinking cap for this one. So pause the video, see what you guys can come up with. And as always, what do we look for? We look for checking moves. How many total checks do we have in this position? Let's go piece by piece. With the rook, we have 1. That's it. With the pawn, none. Dark square bishops on the wrong color, so we can't do it with the dark square bishop. With this knight, we have 1, 2. With this knight, we have 1, 2. With the light squared bishop, we don't have any checks because the knight's in the way. With the queen, ironically, it doesn't seem possible, but the queen has no check here, has no way to get to the king. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 checking moves. Okay, so let's pursue each one of these, visualizing this in our mind. Rook takes, check. Okay, either the rook could recapture or the king could recapture. So check. King takes. Do we have any checks in that position? We don't have any checks with our knights anymore. Can't check. The bishop's down. Now the light square bishop's the wrong color. We do have a couple of checks. Takes. King takes. Bishop takes d6. That is a check. Pawn could recapture or the queen could recapture. The king is still here. I think the king will be able to escape. I don't see any follow-up there. Rook takes. King takes. Queen h7 is now a new check. Rook blocks on f7. Do we have another check in that position? The only check that we have there is simply taking the rook, but then the king will take our queen, and we can give another check, but the king escapes. So don't see any follow-up there. But it does not look like rook takes knight on e7 is the way. You guys watch The Mandalorian. This is the way. That is not the way. Let's check out this knight. Check here on g5. Okay, so check, pawn takes. Okay, do we have any checks in that position? We still have our rook check, but the king can take, and I think the king will be able to escape. Check, pawn takes, but now that introduces the queen check. Now we can bring the queen to the e4 square or the e1 square. Check, takes. I always tell everybody, if you can get your queen as close to the king as possible, you should almost always do that. Why try to check from way, way far away when you can bring your queen in? The closer your queen is to your opponent's king, the more likely it is that you're going to have mating nets and opportunities to check. If you check here, then the king goes, you're still able to give lots of different checks because you're closer. If check, pawn takes, if queen check here and the king walks away, your queen is just simply too far away to give additional checks. Okay, so check, pawn takes, queen here, king back, rook takes, rook takes. The knight could move somewhere. We would have a discovered check, but I believe the king can escape to c8. So that doesn't look like that's correct. What if the knight goes here to c5? Check. Okay. What if, well, if the knight goes to c5, the king will not be able to escape because the knight is there. The knight is guarding that square. So where can the king go after knight c5 check? It can't go there because now our queen is now guarding d5. It can't go there because of the bishop. It can't go there because of the pawn, and it can't go there because of the rook. So if we give a check on c5 with a knight, the king cannot go anywhere. That's promising. So that means either the queen has to take or the pawn has to take. Okay. So knight to c5 check. Let's say the queen takes. The queen is on c5. Do we have any checks in that position? We do. We could bring our queen into e4, but then the queen can just block. Yes, we could take that, but then the pawn takes back, and I don't see a checkmate. What about knight to c5 check? Queen takes. What other checks do we have? We have the check here, but then the queen can just take that. So knight to c5, queen takes. We have this check, knight to c7 check. And then here, again, the king will not be able to go anywhere because now when you give a check on c5, queen takes, you give a check with this knight, the king doesn't have this square because, now the bishop rears its head. Now the bishop is guarding that square. So knight c5 takes, queen takes, knight takes. The only move is for black to play queen takes on c7. All right, so the queen's on c7. Now do we have any checks? Queen to e4 check. The king cannot go there because the bishop can't go there, or there because of the queen. Can't go there because of the rook, and there's no way to block. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very cool three-move checkmate. 1, 2, 3. Hope you guys enjoyed this. See you on the next one.